Would you drive your personal vehicle 100,000 miles and never do an oil change? Ignore the flashing red engine light on your dashboard, hoping it'll just go away. Continue to drive it after you drop the front wheel into a deep, deep pothole at 70 miles an hour. Of course not. You would take steps to maintain it. Fix the vehicle as soon as possible. That's because you are the manager of your personal fleet of 1, 2, 3, maybe you got more cars than that in your family, I don't know. But you know it's going to end up costing you more and the inconvenience of what's going on. So here's the question as you go along here. What's going to be changing for you when it comes to the fleet at your contracting business? The consequences of not being proactive has yet another layer when it comes to the risk and a huge financial impact. That's because each one of your trucks is a rolling cash register. And that's because each one of your trucks that goes out for service or installation has the ability to generate revenue for your business that goes with it. So when it comes to your business, you need to avoid waiting for things to happen. You need someone who is acting at your company as a fleet manager. Someone has to have this job. I don't care what size company you are, to make sure that those trucks not only stay on the road, but also are utilized properly by the technicians who are operating them. You may think, again, you're too small to have a fleet manager, or maybe you're so big that you need a full-time fleet manager. And possibly neither of you are correct, because maybe your install manager or your warehouse manager's name could also be in the box that calls fleet manager. And that's pretty typical in most companies, including some pretty big ones that I've been at. They just need to have somebody willing and able to do the job. But I'll get into what that job is shortly. First, let's talk about the fleet itself. The first thing you need to consider is how trucks or vehicles age, the cost of maintenance, and the frequency of that downtime, which is so dangerous on your vehicles. It actually climbs what I call a hockey stick as they age and the vehicles are out on the road. The need for more and more money being spent on vehicles and time down. Sometimes it's not even about how old the truck is. It's a lot about the kind of use that you put on this truck. If you have a power takeoff or PTO, you know what I'm talking about. That's also why you need to work with your financial manager, which should be an owner, by the way, to make sure you're able to upgrade your fleet on a regular basis. Personally, I've been a huge fan of leasing over buying these days. Now, my company was blessed. We had plenty of cash. We used to buy these trucks all the time, thinking it was great. But we actually switched 20-something years ago to leasing it because of a lot of benefits that we found of leasing versus owning. We no longer drove them into the ground, but either way you do it, somebody still has to be on top of all that it takes to be making sure that that vehicle is being driven safely and its downtime is being minimized. So what does a fleet manager do exactly? Well, for one, they are in charge of training the technicians and apprentices, the people who drive the vehicles, on how to safely operate their vehicle and according to what is outlined in the technician manual and in the apprentice manual when it comes to operating vehicles safely. They are in charge of overseeing that proper inspections are being done daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly, being done so that you stay in compliance. And again, you minimize downtime, troubles, issues. Some inspections are done by the driver of the vehicle, and some are done by the fleet manager, and some are done with both of them together. A fleet manager also needs to know what the drivers are counting on them to do for them, and what outsources are required when it comes to road safety and operating a vehicle that generates issues. Let's just say a big vehicle, flat tire comes up. That's pretty common. Too heavy and too dangerous to safely upload and change a tire, or it may need to be towed. You need to have that already in that fleet manager manual so you know what to do. They also need to know what to do in the cases of a traffic accident, a stolen vehicle, normal wear and tear, tracking of repetitive maintenance issues that are cropping up, and then a compliance with agencies just like DOT, Department of Transportation. A fleet manager needs their own operations manual. Here's a small excerpt from my fleet manager manual that's a small but important part of my signature operating manual systems. Fleet manager. Scheduling vehicles for preventive maintenance. At the beginning of each month, the fleet manager will give the dispatcher and the install coordinator a list of vehicles that are due for preventive maintenance. The two departments will work together to make sure the technicians bring in their designated vehicles on time. The dispatcher will assign a spare vehicle, if available, to the service technician, while the vehicle mechanics or the outsources service that technicians for regularly assigned vehicles. Install coordinator will assign a spare vehicle, if available, to the installers, while the vehicle mechanics or the outsource service that technician's regularly assigned vehicle. Rather than switching to a spare vehicle, a technician may ask if they can leave their regularly assigned vehicle at the shop for a time when they are off, like their day off, vacation. Note, the fleet manager will try whenever to satisfy these requests whenever possible. So that's a very small snippet of a very big manual and a lot of these sections that are covered in the technician, apprentice, and the fleet manager. Okay, got more to share about fleet management. All of this said, the technician does have a role to play here, and that again goes back to the technician manual, which clues them in about road safety. What are they supposed to be doing and not doing? The fleet manager's manual is in sync with that, so they both know what each other is doing. So the two of them are talking to each other. The technicians, aka the drivers, of the vehicle know when they're supposed to be bringing the fleet manager up to speed on what and how far they can go. The manual also makes clear what they can and can't do, that being then the drivers. Like we mentioned before, an extraordinary heavy vehicle is not a smart idea for a guy to pull off the side of the road and try to lift that thing. Let's say you got these big trucks. This is just a particular case of a flat tire, very dangerous and really a bad news. But if they don't have the proper jack, the proper training, and more chances they're going to hurt themselves than anybody else that's with them. So the dispatcher needs to be as part of this loop and bring the fleet manager together, and we get this handled properly. Everyone needs to know what to do when the truck breaks down during normal business hours, nights, and weekends. And that should all be in documented procedures. Another key responsibility of the fleet manager is to check periodically as to where these trucks are and when are they moving. For example, if a technician has permission from you to take their truck home, you want to make sure that vehicle stays at home when they're not at work. So we don't want them traveling off in your truck to their cousin's house to do a repair, or worse yet, your customer's house with your truck doing their own personal side work. That brings me to fleet management software. And typically there's GPS reporting as part of any good software program today. However, if no one is looking at the reports, you won't know any better. What you think might cost some time and energy and money for this, to have someone filling, again, not a full-time job necessarily, that fleet manager role, you need to consider how much it costs to have a truck out of service or out of operation every day. And if it's a whole week or worse, you're looking at some serious money. That's why it's so important to be proactive, to make sure you have your best chance of keeping these trucks rolling and safe, and assigning those responsibilities to someone who is filling the fleet manager position the best way to achieve your goal.